In today's video, we're going to go through a complicated piece of our insurance landscape, which is Covered California versus Medi-Cal. There are two different entities. A lot of people don't understand the rules, the pros and cons of each. There can be split situations where kids get Medi-Cal, parents get Covered California. Let's go into all this and see if we can clear it up. So stick with us in this video, and we're going to make the whole Covered California versus Medi-Cal much easier to understand. First, let's understand the two entities. They're two separate things altogether. There's Medi-Cal and Covered California. Medi-Cal is the California state version of Medicaid, a federal program. In fact, the majority of funds come from Washington for our program. And essentially, Medi-Cal is usually based on income. If our income is below a certain level, then we qualify for Medi-Cal, and part of that is essentially a health plan, a health insurance plan that's state-sponsored with very little out-of-pocket, if anything, no premium, and very little when you actually get sick or hurt. This is a state-sponsored program, usually based on income. There are other triggers such as pregnancy. There can be certain disability triggers as well, but income is a primary driver of the bulk of Medi-Cal for people that are on it. Again, state-sponsored, money comes from Washington. Medi-Cal is our version, and they administer it. And then usually they'll contract out with private carriers like LA Care or HealthNet or Molina to then actually administer the health plan itself, but they're paying for it. That's Medi-Cal. And then you have Covered California. Covered California is California's version of the health exchange or the Affordable Care Act's exchange or marketplace for buying health insurance for individuals and families. It's also based on income. So typically, we have a rate chart, which we'll look at, and below a certain level, for adults, you'll have Medi-Cal if you submit a Covered California application. And then above a certain level, you'll get Covered California. And you'll get subsidies depending on our income, which brings down your monthly premium. And then you can get richer versions of the Silver plan, depending on what our income is. And California expanded the Silver 73 to everyone, regardless of income now, as it goes higher, which is fantastic. So there's a dividing line. And if you notice, I said based on income for adults. So that level is right between 138% and 150% on the chart. Closer to 150%, because if you're right close to 138%, Medi-Cal will keep pulling on the account to see if you qualify. But for children under 19, there's a different threshold that's much higher in terms of income. It's at the 266 level. And actually, probably 270, because if you're close to that level, again, it'll keep pulling you. So you'll have what's called split households where the adults are offered Covered California, the kids are offered Medi-Cal. We'll talk a little bit later about what you can do about that. What are your options if that doesn't work, because the doctors don't work with Medi-Cal for the kids, but that happens. So state-sponsored Medi-Cal, very little cost, if any, Covered California based on your income, different plans and options and carriers. That's the top level. Let's dive in a little on the pros and cons. Probably one of the biggest things we see, and we get a lot of feedback from our members who have Medi-Cal, who have Covered California, have split households, as we talked about, is on the network side. Network means doctors and hospitals you have access to. And so one issue we come across, and one of the reasons some parents are like, look, I need to get my kids the standard plans, and there are ways to do that if they've been offered Medi-Cal just without a subsidy. And we'll talk about that later, is that the networks for Medi-Cal generally are smaller, and they can be impacted because so many people during COVID have entered the Medi-Cal system. It can be hard to get doctor visits, to find doctors by you, accepting new patients. It's just a network issue, and that it is what it is. In certain areas, it won't be as bad. In other areas, it's going to be pretty impacted. And that's just a function of the popularity or how many people during COVID, they expanded Medi-Cal significantly. And so a lot of people hit the rolls, and that's been a problem or an issue we've seen. Versus Covered California, you have broader networks. You have choices of PPOs, HMOs. Now, there's a cost to that. So the kind of downside there is we have a monthly premium depending on what our income is, and we're going to share in costs with copays, coinsurance. The Silver 73 and above, they have no deductible now, which is great. So you can have richer plans and you can have richer networks. Probably the biggest difference between Medi-Cal and Covered California we see from a practical point of view is around the networks. Doctors, hospitals, access to them. Most of the models on the Medi-Cal side are HMO. So right off the bat, there's going to be more management of care. It's probably similar to what Covered California is if you pick an HMO. For example, LA Care to LA Care, although the reimbursement to doctors can be different. So generally, doctors are probably going to be a little more open, have more slots for Covered California. It's just the way it is. They have to function as a financial entity and pay the bills. And so the reimbursement rates really affect that. For example, Covered California's reimbursement rates to doctors, hospitals are not as much as employer plans. So you can see kind of the pecking order there. But this network piece is probably the biggest thing we see because on a cost point of view, Medi-Cal is going to work out better. On the network side, it's tricky. So if we find out that that's going to be an issue for, say, your kids or you with Medi-Cal, what can we actually do about it? Let's turn to that now. We have a whole video on this for split households where parents have kids that were enrolled into Medi-Cal when they went through the Covered California application process. We'll talk a little bit about what drives that in the next section. But here's the deal. You are allowed to actually enroll yourself and or your kids in a Covered California plan with no subsidy, even if you're eligible for Medi-Cal. And there's a way we do it. And it's just because we know the system. We process thousands of Covered California apps, so we know how to manage that. But there's a way to actually do it. Covered California is not going to advertise it. Medi-Cal is not going to advertise it because whatever. But there is a way to do it, and we're following the rules. We don't get a subsidy. We don't get the richer silver plans, but then we have the full access to the networks that Covered California has, including the PPO if we want it, or some of these other carriers and richer networks. So that is something we can do. Reach out to us if you've fallen into that situation where your kids were offered Medi-Cal, their doctors don't work with Medi-Cal, or you're finding the networks are impacted and you want other options also for adults as well. And we can walk you through how to do that. Let's talk now about the final piece, which is really important and kind of drives what's happening there, which is income. Let's go there now. Let's talk about where a lot of the confusion comes from. It comes from the income piece. When you're submitting a Covered California application, Covered California looks at income on an annualized basis, right? But Medi-Cal, which is part of this process, it's built into the Covered California app, looks at it on a monthly basis. So I can make $100,000 from January through June. I'm in July, I've lost my job, I'm applying for coverage. My income right now in July is zero. When I put that income in, 100K January through June, ended June 30th, the system's going to roll me to Medi-Cal. Even though I'm way over the Medi-Cal limit, as of right now, this month, the system's saying, oh, you're eligible for Medi-Cal. You have zero current income. That's what causes a lot of confusion. The income piece already is tricky. You have W-2, you have self-employment, you have unemployment, you have all kinds of things. People are spending down retirement accounts, which is a taxable event. So reach out to us so we can fine-tune and really figure out what your income picture is, and we'll let you know which way it's going to go based on the numbers and based on how the system looks at it. But this really causes many of the issues because a lot of times people's income is variable, where they'll get income when they apply, it shows zero, system will roll them to Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal will take 30 to 45 days to say, oh, by the way, you don't qualify, then back to Covered California, which is a whole nother process. And sometimes people find out that their Covered California just stopped because Medi-Cal took over the account and they're pending or they rolled onto Medi-Cal, they go in for a pharmacy or whatever, and it gets denied. Oh, you don't have coverage anymore. And they don't even know about it till after the fact. So reach out to us. If we can figure out the income piece up front early before submitting the Cover California app, we can avoid so many headaches on this front, because that is an issue in terms of how income is structured throughout the year. And we can kind of walk you through with your situation. There's no cost for assistance. Medi-Cal doesn't deal with agents, but we know enough about it from dealing with people all the time who are going in and out of Medi-Cal. And we'll let you know if you're eligible for Medi-Cal and that's what you want. We'll let you know kind of how to proceed. We do that all the time as well. But reach out to us, no cost for assistance, and we can help guide and navigate these two worlds to make sure you have the best setup for you to be able to see your doctors, your hospital, and for the lowest cost option. That's, of course, very important when we're looking at Medi-Cal versus Cover California. If you stuck around this long, thank you. We appreciate it. You probably have more questions. Reach out to us. There's zero cost for assistance. You can call, email, chat, or best yet, book a time, and we can go through your personal situation to address any questions regarding California health insurance. Because a lot of sources out there are nationwide, and California is really unique. We need to go through the specifics of your situation in your area to find the best options. We don't push. We don't try to sell anything. We answer questions. And if you look at our Google reviews, you'll see that reflected in how we deal with this. We're happy to help. Reach out to us. And do us a big favor. If you could like and subscribe below, that's fantastic, so we can keep bringing this information to California.